All right, well, I'd like to welcome you back again to the third annual Georgetown Global Forum. And the next thing on our agenda is our keynote conversation. This will take place between our own president, Georgetown President Jack DeGioia, and President Luis Alberto Moreno. So I'd like to welcome both of you. I see you're both ready to go. Take their places. Wonderful. Dr. John Jack DeGioia has been president of Georgetown University since 2001. For nearly 3 decades, he has helped to define and strengthen Georgetown as a premier institution for education and research, serving both as a senior administrator and a faculty member since graduating from the university in 1979. To prepare young people for leadership roles in the global community, Dr. DeGioia has expanded opportunities for intercultural and interreligious dialogue, welcomed world leaders to campus, and convened international conferences to address challenging issues. He represents Georgetown at the World Economic Forum, the Council on Foreign Relations, and the U.S. National Commission for UNESCO, where he recently served as chair of the Education Committee. Before I bring you up to the stage, Dr. DeGioia, I just want to give you guys a quick reminder that the questions, the Q&A session for this particular panel, this particular conversation, will be done via cards. You should have had them on your chair. So if you do have any questions for our panel, for our gentlemen after their discussion, then you can submit these cards to our staff members and we'll take that and go with the questions. And now, Dr. DeGioia, thank you.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Anna. I'd like to welcome all of you to our 2010 Global Forum, and I'm especially delighted to thank our special guest, Ambassador Luis Alberto Moreno, the President of the Inter-American Development Bank, for a conversation here this afternoon. Ambassador Moreno is already an honored member of the Georgetown family. Last year, we awarded him a doctorate of humane letters for his successful corporate leadership and remarkable public service. More important, he is a Hoya dad. His daughter Natalia is a member of the Georgetown College class of 2010, and today is celebrating Georgetown Day on the main campus. That's the sound you hear if you walk right outside the door. We'll have an opportunity to be together to celebrate a few more times in the coming weeks. After earning degrees in business administration and economics, Ambassador Moreno became a successful business manager and then the executive producer for an award-winning news program. He was then called into the public sector and served in a variety of leadership positions in the administration of Colombian President Cesar Gaviria. He led a successful privatization program and developed new financing instruments for private industry. He also modernized the Ministry of Economic Development and directed the low-income housing strategy portion of the government's social investment portfolio. After returning to the private sector, he was then appointed Colombia's ambassador to the United States, a post which he successfully served for 7 years. Colombia-U.S. ties improved dramatically during his tenure. Among his many accomplishments, he built strong bipartisan support in the United States Congress for more than $4 billion in U.S. assistance to his country, which significantly improved its security and economy. He has received some of the highest decorations and distinctions that the Colombian nation can bestow. In 2005, he was elected president of the Inter-American Development Bank, the IDB, and he leads its efforts to promote economic and social development in Latin America and the Caribbean. Over the last 12 months, the IDB has approved lending and grants of more than $15 billion. In recent years, it has approved an average of $10 billion annually to finance projects supporting key priorities such as infrastructure, energy, water, education, and health. In directing this work of development and compassion, he has made a significant contribution to the quality of life for the people in the Caribbean and Latin America. And like all of you, I'm eager for his insights on relief and reconstruction efforts. And I'll begin our conversation, and I have some questions to get us started. And again, as you have questions, if you could just put those on those cards and pass them to the aisles, my colleagues will pick them up and I'll take us from there. So thank you for being with us this afternoon and join me for this conversation. So before we get started, tell us about the IDB. How big is it? How do the countries participate? How do you make decisions? How are you structured? What's that all about?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me, Jack, and for being here, and for the great work that you do for such a wonderful university I've come to love and appreciate as I see my daughter grow every year as a member of the Georgetown class. Secondly, it's always great to see that you have the challenge and the opportunity to invite a banker, which these days is not easy, but certainly, I'm not, the IDB is precisely a different kind of banking institution. It is basically a development bank, which means that everything that we do, it is basically lending to countries at long-term, long tenures for anywhere from 20 to 30 to, in some occasions, to 40 years, with specific grant facilities for countries like Haiti, or very soft loan windows for countries like Honduras or Nicaragua or Bolivia. Now, the bank is comprised of 48 countries that are its shareholders. 26 of those countries are borrowers, and are basically the majority of countries from Mexico down to the Rio Grande, with the exception of some of the Eastern Caribbean states, which are about 6. The shareholders, besides the US and Canada, we have in Asia, China, Korea, and Japan, and basically Israel and 14 European countries. How do we get our funding? Basically by a commitment that works in 2 ways. What we call callable capital, that is capital that the bank typically doesn't use, but it allows it to get a AAA rating. In terms, therefore, you are getting the best and the most competitive pricing for the loans that you provide, and you will give them to countries at a very low margin. So it is much more than just lending money to a country. It is about a set of conditions, from an education program to a hydroelectric program in a country, to a development of small and medium enterprises that we can do through grants, or for that matter, for a major public-private partnership, be it a mass transit system in one country, or be it a toll road in another. So it's a very unique set of areas of activity that we have begun to narrow down in a number of priorities. Priorities, understanding that some of the key areas of the future, climate change and sustainable development. In the area of infrastructure, largely in some of those that touch development goals, such as the case of water and sanitation. We're probably the largest institution today providing lending for water and sanitation. Today in Latin America, still you have about 60 million people without access to clean water, and about 80 million people without access to sanitation, and this is where many of the diseases that children under 5 get. On the other hand, energy. No question, this is perhaps the single biggest source of infrastructure demand in the future in our hemisphere. Between now and the year 2030, the needs that Latin America will have for energy are about $1.6 trillion, and that's basically the result of the levels of growth that we're having. So these are kinds of the things that we do. How is it governed? Well, we have a resident board, which means that you have representatives of the 48 countries sitting at any one time in a board of directors that normally happens every week. There is actually 14 chairs, which makes the governance of the institution a real challenge. And on the other hand, the main deliberative body, it is a board of governors that is represented largely by the ministers of finance of those 48 countries that meet once a year to make some of the key decisions of the bank.